Welcome, John, on my podcast, which is going to be really saucy and spicy today. And I'm
Absolutely.
really excited to have you on my podcast because you have a really defined niche, and a lot of people in the US are interested in hot sauces. And I particularly was not really aware before meeting you. And the stories I listened to while you were telling me how did you choose and what kind of preference somebody can choose from different peppers, spice level, hotness. So I am looking forward, and somebody who is into hot sauces, this show is gonna be bomb for them.
Thank you, China. I'm really glad to be here. I'm really excited to share some of the insights that I've acquired over the last several years between making over 300 different hot sauces to reviewing dozens, if not hundreds of hot sauces at this point, and sharing what I've seen in the marketplace and what's possible with really using hot sauce to make your next meal more exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's get to know you first. How
Certainly.
did this hot sauce persona come up? Like, what was your inclination towards hot sauce?
Great question. On my website, which is hotsaucecookbook.com, I have an about the author page. Essentially, I went to school at the University of Buffalo, which is really where my relationship with hot sauce started. I saw everybody all around me putting buffalo sauce on everything, and I fell in love with it at that point in time. Fast forward to when I was living down in Florida, there you have the daddle pepper that's from St. Augustine. So you have some sauces there. And I had access to a handful of things like Marie Sharp's, or El Yucateo classic habanero from Belize. And then there's all the influence from the islands with the Caribbean food that's in South Florida. So heat and peppers was all around me all the time. So fast forward a little while, I actually taught cooking classes when I graduated from college. I was working my way through college in the restaurant industry, including doing some cooking. But I also was actually a tutor for Princeton Review. So when I found out that I could get paid to teach cooking, I was like, sign me up. And I was a Pampered Chef rep, and I actually did a theme around chilies, making a meatless base sauce that would have all the ingredients that you would normally see in a chili. And then I had individual pods that I mixed into that, and it had the ability for everybody to taste what the individual pepper tastes like, and then blend it to their specific heat level and their specific taste preference. And so that kind of really started me on the road to having a bunch of chilies on hand. Then about 7, 8 years ago, my wife was like, "You need to get back in the kitchen. You need to cook. That's kind of your, where you have some sanity." So at the same time, we went on a trip to Asheville, North Carolina, and I had a smoked habanero sauce from a local brewery.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, that sauce is really good, but I'm not driving 4 hours to get another bottle of hot sauce. I need to figure out how to make this.
Okay.
And thus the hot sauce sensei was born.
Okay. That's really interesting. Like, so, that your aha moment where you actually thought this hobby could be like a really bigger thing. What was that moment for you?
So again, I can't seem to get away from food. Once you get bit by the restaurant bug, and again, professionally, I've done business development for the last 30 years, and didn't have to necessarily work in the restaurant space, but I've been very blessed to travel around and eat at wonderful restaurants in the course of my work all over the country. And I actually spent some time studying overseas, and I've been to travel to Europe on business. So I've just been very fortunate to try a wide range of cuisines. And when I started to make hot sauces, I thought maybe I'll write a cookbook. And as you are likely well aware, cookbooks these days is a dying industry, just because nobody's gonna, go out and buy a book as much as they are gonna jump onto Google or ChatGPT or something along those lines and say, "Give me a hot sauce recipe," and everything comes out that way. So I shifted. I decided to take hotsaucecookbook.com and make that an electronic cookbook and just offer it for free. But I had to come up with some way to offset the costs of that. And that's really where I leaned back on my business consulting days, to where I actually, when social media first started, I used to teach people how to use social media, and it's a lot of it is about storytelling. So I love the craft hot sauce makers that are out there and the stories that are behind some of these sauces. So that's kind of where I started to make a transition into turning this into something more than a hobby, is to help these makers to tell their story from my unique perspective, understanding what they're trying to accomplish with the sauce that they're making, kind of like an art critic of sorts.
Right, right. Absolutely. I think it's really important that if everybody has a story behind their brand, but
Yes.
it needs to be out there. And people like you have a niche of hot sauce, right? So it's important for hot sauce brands to be out there and let their story differentiate from a lot of brands available in the market.
Yes.
So I think you rightly said storytelling makes any brand distinguished from existing thousands of brands in the market.
Yes. And again, so hot sauce, for those who aren't really into the craft hot sauce world, is really no different than wine or craft beer or craft spirits, from
Mhm.
the perspective that each individual pepper is kind of like the different grapes that you have to make wine or the different hops that you have to make beer.
Right.
So, what these craft producers are doing is taking these unique ingredients that do have terroir, just like, wine made in France is different than wine made in California,
Mhm.
and actually creating something that you may never taste again.
Mhm.
And it's all about the experience of the ingredients and really embracing the freshness of the ingredients or the creativity of the maker on
Mhm.
how they're combining those ingredients. And then, in most cases, most pieces of protein, whether it's chicken or pork or eggs, whatever you might be using, they all have some element of savoriness to them, some umami, but usually they're lacking the acids, this which gives you the sour flavor, the herbs which give you the bitter flavor, the sweetness maybe that would be in things, and the saltiness. So hot sauce actually has the ability to take a normal piece of food and round out the flavor experience in essentially one step. And that's what's really exciting about it. But that's the kind of thing when I'm looking at different hot sauce companies. I always tell people, when I was working in the restaurant industry in the 90s, I was, in a wine bar and restaurant where we had over 30 taps and 50 kinds of beer by the bottle and over 100 kinds of wine by the glass. So I've had a very good opportunity to try a bunch of things,
Mhm.
but it's always about what haven't I seen yet? Or what's the new combination? What's the new flavor? And that's what gets me excited. And there's an infinite number of possibilities. It's all about, kind of tapping into what those individual makers are up to.
Absolutely. Like you rightly said, the hot sauce has the ability to actually make the anything that you're having like 10x better, right?
Yes.
I do feel that because whenever we put any dressing or hot sauce, it does change the taste, flavors, and profile of what we are having. And a lot of them, I realize it needs to be very complementary because it's like wine, like you have to pair it well with the food. So,
Precisely.
like you mentioned, it's like actually wine. What kind of food goes well with what kind of sauces, like flavors, profile? If you could just walk us through that.
Sure, I have some different examples I can use. Let's take a look at the different flavor profiles of chilies to begin with. Chilies are botanically berries.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have some of them are going to have a little bit of a sweetness and berry-like qualities, like a guajillo chili that's typical in Mexican cuisine,
Mm-hmm.
and so that might add that nice bright freshness. Again, with berries, a lot of times they have that more some of the bitterness and the sweetness. So from the natural sugars, but then there's also the anthocyanins that are in those fruit that
Mm-hmm.
give them their wonderful nutritional properties as well as their deep pigments and colors. And so that's really where you get these kind of unique flavor profiles to go with. So wherever, usually what I like to think about is what flavor profile would I normally pair with this food, and then what can I substitute in the form of hot sauce? So again, thinking if you have strawberries, for example, you could potentially swap in a guajillo type hot sauce. Similarly, a lot of your unripe chilies will have more of those grassy notes or those herbal notes
Mm-hmm.
that might be present in a lot of green vegetables. So I like to typically pair verde hot sauces with anything that's, when I have a lot of greens, whether it's a salad or some cooked collards or some sauteed spinach. I find that really plays well. Similarly, I like to sometimes just use a verde hot sauce in place of like a lettuce on a sandwich.
Okay.
And then you do have other sauces other peppers that are very earthy in their flavor profile. If you think of a Mexican mole sauce, the main pepper that is in that's very earthy is poblano, which when it's dried is actually called an ancho. In Mexico, they like to trip you up. And the unripe or the ripe pepper, well, actually, it could even be the all of the above. The unripe pepper sometimes has a different name than the ripe pepper, which has a different name than the dried pepper. But so things like poblanos or aji panca out of Peru.
Mhm.
Those have very earthy flavor profiles, which really give a nice balance and grounding to the food that you're eating and add that layer of depth. If you think of something along the lines of like how mushrooms have that earthiness to them, and so those are just a few examples. I could likely come up with a lot more if you'd like.
Okay, okay. I would actually want to ask if hot sauce was to be used in a cocktail, which one would you like to have? And
So for starters, if you like Mexican food, a spicy margarita is a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
And you will see on the market right now that there are a number of tequila brands that already infuse their tequilas with everything from jalapeno to chipotle, which are the smoked jalapenos, to
Mhm.
habanero. Sometimes they use ghost peppers, which are basically 3 times hotter than a habanero, about 1 million Scoville units, and
Okay,
that's the heat scale that they use.
okay.
The ghost pepper obviously is very, very hot, so they don't need to leave it in there all that long to get the infusion. Yeah, anytime that you have chilies go really well with other fruits. So if you think about how in Mexico they'll put chamoy sauce onto fruit or hot sauce onto fruit just straight away. So if you have any kind of a fruity cocktail, any kind of a cocktail that has pineapple juice in it or mango
Yes.
juice in it, a little bit of hot sauce that will spice it up will go a long way. I personally, for my 40th birthday, I came up with a cocktail that was 3 parts ginger ale, one
Mhm.
part tequila, and then as much Chipotle Tabasco, which is what I had on hand at the time, as you preferred. I told the average person you could use the size of a dime in the bottom of the glass. Me
Huh?
personally, I was probably like a quarter or a silver dollar amount of sauce. And to me, that's just like the perfect grilling drink because it's got those nice smoky, sweet properties. And then you have your tequila flavor on the backside. And I actually opted not to use citrus in that case. And then last but not least, there's always a spicy old fashioned.
Mhm.
So a little bit of hot maple or hot honey that you could mix in to an old fashioned cocktail instead of simple syrup
Mhm.
is a great way to heat it up. And, again, if you enjoy hot sauce in general and you like a little bit of extra spice,
Mhm.
that's always a fun way to make a spicy cocktail.
Okay. So, like you mentioned, it goes really well with some fruits and everything. I have seen like a lot of Mexican people have hot sauces with fruits.
Hmm.
That's like a perfect combination. In fact, I tried one of the hot sauces with mango and it tasted really good because mango is like sweeter and there's no acid. And with hot sauce, it was pairing well with for that acidic note side and a little bit of spiciness, but not too hot also. So I think yeah, that goes really well. What are other combinations that you would suggest for if somebody wants to try out the fruits and hot sauces?
So, in general, if you think about, there's two things that you're kind of thinking about. First is the heat level that you're going for.
Yes, yes.
So understanding how hot certain chilies are and what your personal tolerance is going to be a big factor. The other thing is what kind of complementary flavor do you want to add?
Hmm.
I personally, again, I love sweet and smoky. So
Okay.
if you think about barbecue, there's a lot of hot sauces that are made with smoked peppers or other smoked ingredients. So
Hmm.
sometimes you can kind of get this barbecue sauce esque approach
Hmm.
by taking a chipotle based hot sauce or a smoked hot sauce and pairing it with things like pineapple, or even watermelon. Creates a very interesting flavor. Another flavor profile that is very common in chilies is what I call clean heat. And
Okay.
those are basically where the pepper itself doesn't have a lot of flavor characteristics. You just kind of feel the heat.
Hmm.
So again, if you're eating peaches or apricots or cherries, sometimes adding some of those hot sauces will naturally pair with those fruit. And really, when you think about it, a hot sauce is just a pureed pickle.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, if you have just fruit and you take the hot sauce and you put it on you're theoretically pickling, you're deconstructing that hot sauce to
Us.
begin with. So by looking at the ingredients that are the what I call the adjuncts.
Absolutely. That's a great guide if somebody wants to just buy a bottle of hot sauce, how to read those ingredients. Because that was something I learned from you when I met you for the first
Yes.
time. Because I never like thought hot sauce to be like having a whole different bunch of variety to it. But I was always like, oh, I will check the heat level and that's it. But you made me actually told me how to read a label on a hot sauce bottle.
That's
So
it.
thank you. A lot of people would not know this, but this can be a great way to know how to read a label, basically.
Yep.
So,
But glass is
So talking about your experiences, which one was your like wildest experience in terms of heat, smokiness? Because you like smoked sauces. So which one would you like to mention that has been like a craziest experience you have tried?
Sorry. So the highest rating, and sometimes I get pushback when I do ratings from, and this is usually from the customers, and because I don't believe in a 10 out of 10 rating. That to me is a unicorn.
Okay.
The highest rating I ever given was a 9.4, and
Mhm.
that was for Greg's Famous out of Savannah. And when I met Greg for the first time, he was already over 500 recipes. And he just goes in and creates a small batch, and he's working with some local farmers. And he's just got, when you read the list of ingredients, it's so completely off the chain. And things like when you have to Google half of the ingredients on the label, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. I've never seen this. I'm probably never going to have it again. Let's see what he's up to and how all of this plays out. And
Mhm.
then you start getting all these different layers as you let it sit on your tongue and on your palate, and you can start picking out maybe. And again, if you didn't read the label, you wouldn't necessarily know what it was. But when it's very interesting to read I again, my wife, she does not like to, like, when we go to wine tastings or things like that, she doesn't want to read the notes. I believe in reading the notes. I want to know what's in there because I want to see, okay, did that stand out? How was it a lead singer? Was it a supporting, was a backup singer?
Right.
Did it get lost altogether?
Yeah.
So again, with Greg though, he's like, I've never met anybody that makes sauce like I make sauce. I'm like, well, I neither have I really, or not many people. There's a handful of the commercial guys that I feel that's my highest compliment when I'm working with the maker is you make sauce like I make sauce. And what I do, for hotsaucecookbook.com is really hard to replicate in the commercial setting
Mhm.
because when you're working with co-packers and process authority and other things, you can't use the ingredients and get it to a commercial price point that's going to be viable, for the average person. And that's the big challenge. And I look at craft hot sauce, taking a quick sidebar,
Mhm.
I look at craft hot sauce as an affordable luxury. It's a way to support a small business owner, but
Mhm.
also to get a craft product that, like I said, you're not likely going to have again in some cases because just like wine,
Mhm.
once the grapes from that season are gone, grapes are gone, and you're never going to grapes are never going to be exactly the same again. And that's the same thing with peppers. So there's a lot of really fun opportunities to get some unique stuff. And like I said, Greg, he focuses on cranking out recipe after recipe after recipe. And that's
Mhm.
what I love. So he's probably my favorite. And then in terms of other experiences, my brother goaded me into eating a Carolina Reaper with Mike Jack, who's the world record holder for eating the most Reapers in one setting.
Mhm.
And then I had to turn around and interview Mike. So fortunately, I can handle the heat. But
Mhm.
the funny thing about Carolina Reapers is the heat is delayed. So the first minute that I was just talking and doing, talking about eating it, I actually took a second bite
Mhm.
of the Reaper and just kept on talking. Shifted over to doing my interview, and you can start to see me coughing and my face starting to turn red as I'm doing the interview, and I was starting to struggle. And then right after I finished the interview with Mike, I went off to the side. About 3 minutes later, my eyes were running, my nose was running. And it took me about 20 to 30 minutes to recover from eating that. And like again, I'm all more about flavor than fire.
Mhm.
I like fire and I can appreciate the super hots, but
Mhm.
most of the craft makers that are out there, they're gonna give you a sauce, even when they say it's hot for the average palate. You
Right.
really want to, like, on the label, it might tell you what's hot or what's not. The thing you need to watch out for is extract.
Mhm.
If you see extract on the label, be very, very careful. I had a sauce sent to me, and the guy actually put a sticky note, proceed with caution. And I looked at the first ingredient and it said habanero. I'm like, well, this one over here had Reaper and Scorpion and all these other hot peppers, and that one wasn't so bad. I missed extract in the ingredients. And
Okay. So
literally,
extract makes it more hot.
well, so the extract is literally like when you make pepper spray, pure capsaicin
Yeah.
is 16 million Scoville units. A Carolina Reaper is two. So what they do is they'll extract that capsaicin from the peppers and they refine it out, and you get things that are in the 4 to 8 million Scoville range, sometimes 12 million Scoville range. So all of these crazy hot sauces that are out there, that's typically what they're doing is they're adding extract to get to that point, and that stuff hurts. And literally, I took about the same amount as of the 65% with the Reaper and the Scorpion, and I ate that and I felt it going all the way down. And like an hour later, I was just sitting. My wife looked at me. She goes, "What happened?" I said, "That sauce messed me up." So I know that was more than one story, but again, just lessons from the wise. There's a delayed heat effect on some of
Okay.
the super hots, and watch out for extract.
Something I got to know again. Watch out
Yes,
for extracts.
watch out for extracts.
Yeah. So, now that we're talking a lot about different brands selling hot sauces, what kind of branding would actually, make a hot sauce brand stand out?
That's a wide range because I think you have to pay attention to who your target audience is.
Hmm.
Because in some cases there's people who are selling specifically to those people who want to melt their faces off, and so you see all of these death images and
Yeah.
you know uh, atomic bombs and flames and all this stuff, and so there's a market for that, albeit
I think that is for people who do food challenges on YouTube and videos.
it is it's for people who it's kind of like watching a car accident. You can't look away. A lot of the commercial makers are trying to go for sauces that actually you want to eat with every meal and consume. And, there's a lot of hot sauces that are basically like spicy salad dressing without oil.
Okay.
So, and those get eaten very quickly. And
Mhm.
if you're making sauce and you want somebody to reorder, that's what you want.
Right. Absolutely. Only then you will be able to just get the business running, right?
Right. But a lot of times I think the philosophy that goes into what makes a striking wine label or beer bottle label is the same with hot sauce. You have to, have some either shiny metallics tend to work really well. I've seen glow in the dark labels in the past. One of the things when we were judging for Hot Sauce Fest ATL,
Hmm.
they actually had packaging as one of the scoring criteria. Where I felt like I was usually looking is how close were they on how hot it actually was that they said versus what my perception was. And again, I try to recalibrate. There's usually two schools of thought. You're either going to do the average palate heat scale or
Right.
you're going to do the chili head heat scale.
Right.
And the two are completely different.
Mhm.
But I think you need to have that heat level on the bottle. Otherwise, the hardest thing to do is sell a hot sauce when somebody can't taste it, just like wine, just like beer on the shelf. So you need to have something on there that's going to give people an impression and understanding about what they're getting themselves into.
Right. Right.
So those are some of the things that I've seen that really make a difference.
Okay. That's interesting to know because you mentioned you also do like content creation and marketing for these hot sauce brands. So what are your steps to make sure how is brand differentiated in the market? How do you ensure you're doing a different kind of marketing for a different brand and making them still stand out in the market?
To me, it's about the big question that a lot of people have is how am I going to use this hot sauce? You may look at a hot sauce and say, "Oh, I want to use that on wings," but is if all you say is I want to use that on wings, unless the person eats wings every couple of days, that sauce is going to probably sit there for a while. So I
Yes.
think it's important to show how to pair the sauce and what's the philosophy behind pairing it. And if you look at the content that I have on my Instagram feed, a lot of them are making I don't have a lot of time to cook these days. I'm very busy with the various business work that I do. So I'm very much about meal prepping and fast, quick meals. But again, you can take three ingredients, add a hot sauce, and you have a whole different flavor experience. And then you can take the same three ingredients, add a different hot sauce, and you're in another continent with
Right.
the dish that you just had. And that's to me the great thing about hot sauce, but I try to show unique applications of using that individual sauce. That's why all of my reviews that are the more formal reviews, sometimes I'll do a hot take when I don't have time to get into pairings.
Mhm.
Whenever I do a formal review, I always include pairings and where I've enjoyed the sauce and why I think that particular sauce is a good pairing with a certain flavor or a certain dish.
Right, right. I mean, what you meant is the secret lies in the pairings, right?
A lot of times because at the end of the day, again, it's a business. You want people to reorder your sauce. And again, some sauces are very versatile and all what I'll call all purpose.
Mhm.
And that's why a lot of the sauces that most people have access to on the grocery store shelves are or when you say hot sauce, people think of Frank's. I'll put that on anything, and Frank's is like warm salt, and it's very salty and it's very vinegar forward. Some people don't like. Actually, that's why hot sauce is a very controversial condiment. And I think Instacart had it as the most hated condiment, which is kind of silly. But there's a lot of people when you say Tabasco, oh, that's too much vinegar.
Mhm.
And okay, but that's don't limit your expectation of what hot sauce is to maybe having tried one of these old school classic hot sauces that wasn't necessarily their flavor. There is a whole wide range and world of hot sauces out there. If anybody who's had kids and had to cook numerous meals just to get everybody fed because of people's personal palates, hot sauce is the
Right.
instant eraser for boring, bland dishes because you got to feed your kids and you don't have time to run a short order kitchen.
I mean, this can be an ad for any of the hot sauce brand that wants to just promote themselves as a versatile brand.
So I really like the sauces from Texan Heartland.
Mhm.
He has focused on very approachable heat levels for his core sauces.
Mhm.
His Lone Star Reserve, I just reviewed on my Tamarind blog about a month ago, where Tamarind is actually a backup singer as opposed to some of the other sauces that are on that blog. But it does what I call a flavor flop. So you actually, as it sits on your palate, you initially you get a little bit of that sweet and sour from the tamarind, but then it switches over to the roasted red peppers, and then there's a little bit of mustard in it in the background. So it trails out. But he's also got a low heat Verde and a high heat Verde. Personally, for me, there's not enough high heat Verdes on the market. His Serrano Sunfire is hotter than you would expect because it's got habanero in it as well. And those are some of his core sauces. On the really high end of the spectrum, his roasted onion and garlic Reaper sauce makes my nose run every time I use it. West Indies pepper sauce has just turmeric in it in terms of the spices. It doesn't while they're a Guyanese fourth generation Guyanese recipe.
Mhm.
They don't have any of the other spices like cumin or coriander or ginger that would push it more toward what people might call curry, which is also very common in the West Indies
Right.
and India as well, obviously. But by just using the turmeric, it opens up the versatility. But turmeric by itself is such a wonderful herb. And I don't think, I guess it's a spice, but I don't think enough people
Use it.
taste just one spice in a dish.
Right.
I had an experience when I was working in the kitchen, and we did a tomato sauce that had extra bay leaf in it, and
Okay.
no basil. Like if there was any basil or oregano, it was very very minimal. But it
Okay.
was extra bay leaf in the tomato sauce, and it really accentuated what that herb does on
Right.
its own.
Right.
And that's a palate education that I think everybody who likes food in general
Mhm.
explore what individual ingredients taste like. If you've ever seen the movie Somm, which talks about the 4 or 5 students who are going to get their sommelier certification, master sommelier,
Okay.
they talk about how they train their palate. And that's, I think, really important to anybody who really wants to appreciate food is to train your palate. And then it, things get a lot easier from there in terms of pairings and things like that.
That's absolutely right. But because I felt that while I used to cook, only then I was able to actually realize what am I actually having it. Because if you're not cooking, you're not tasting a lot of things. You are just eating and not realizing what this ingredient gets to which profile level. So, like you mentioned, bay leaf, it's widely used in Indian cooking, dried bay leaf, and it actually enhance a lot of flavors to it, like quite add earthiness to a lot of curries, and we also use it while cooking some steamed rice. It also gives that flavor in that, but we don't actually eat that. So I do realize the importance of actually knowing and training your palate to be, familiar with a lot of tastes and flavors of ingredients, what they bring in the dish. And I get reminded of, why my mom used to add bay leaf every time, and I was like, why are you adding this? This steamed rice. And one day I had steamed rice without bay leaf, and it tasted so much different than what we used to have. So that's the power of adding just one ingredient, maybe.
Yes.
Yes. So you were telling me about that you worked with a restaurant for, so was it like for their hot sauce launch, or was it like for your own experimentation?
So I've worked with some restaurants in the past to do some what I call chili training.
Hmm.
So essentially, I bring a master class of peppers.
Okay.
So when a restaurant wants their kitchen to have a better understanding of ingredients
Hmm.
to develop their own sauces or whatever they want to do, and I'll come in. I've like I said, I've done over 300 recipes. Personally, I feel like sauce is an underused vehicle. If you look at like the major pizza chains, Domino's, for example, they're selling little cups of sauce with the pizza for 75 cents,
Right.
all day long. And so why restaurants don't offer flights of sauce that are actually unique and unusual just for the experience. I mean, there's flights of beer, there's flights of wine, there's flights of whiskey. Why not flights of hot sauce?
Yeah.
But I just don't think that the people have really either. Yeah, I think you have to have a chef who embraces chilies to begin with, or you got to really do something to stand out in the market today. And what's going to bring people back? And having some kind of a rotating sauce menu.
Right.
I mean, I know personally, having always been a hot sauce fan, I would gravitate toward restaurants that had a hot sauce bar. Firehouse Subs before COVID used to have like.
Great idea actually for all the restaurant out there if they want to do really different, and they can even launch their own brand of hot sauces, and they.
Yes, and so I do work with a number of makers who actually private label their sauces for restaurants or come up with brand proprietary recipes.
Okay.
Usually those companies, they'll charge a higher rate if they want to be a proprietary one, but if they will let the sauce maker use it themselves in other applications, just not with the same label, then they usually will charge less because they know that they can get their money back after the fact for the recipe. Yeah, I really feel like, and personally, again, if you think about why the big restaurants, your California Pizza Kitchens, your TGI Fridays, why is this push to get things in the freezer case? It's because every time you open up the freezer and see their company name, you're going to
Right.
think, oh well, maybe I don't want to cook. I don't want to get the kitchen all hot tonight. I'm going to go to California Pizza Kitchen. Now we know that they've had their struggles with their restaurants and whatnot, but
Right.
the bottom line is from a branding perspective, it's all about impressions. And a bottle of hot sauce is going to last usually at least 2 weeks, if not 2 months, maybe even longer. So
Right.
every time they see that bottle, like, oh, we haven't been back over to Joe's in a while. Let's go back to Joe's.
That's
Let's
a
go back to
brand.
Joe's this weekend.
uh,
It's a passive marketing that is, they're like little soldiers working for you all out. So I really encourage companies to, and again, if you have custom sauces that people like on the table, they'll come back just for your sauce.
Absolutely, I think that's a great tool to be out there and for the brand recognition.
1,000%.
So, one last question for just wrapping up, and then we will have a short rapid fire round with you just to make things, just spicy and
Certainly.
interesting. So, what flavor trend do you think is going to blow up soon in the market in terms of for hot sauces?
So I don't know what got into the sauce, but pickles lately have been having a moment.
God.
And there's actually a number of pickle hot sauces that are out there already. I actually have a blog with three of them on my site. But and I've actually done several of them myself. I had a friend who came to town recently that was actually allergic to nightshades, and so I made a
So what?
cucumber-based nightshade. Peppers are
Okay.
nightshades.
Okay.
Peppers, eggplants, potatoes, tomatoes. Those are all nightshade plants, and they have compounds in them that it can cause food allergies,
Okay.
and he happens to have that. He goes, well, usually I'll just suffer because I enjoy the heat. But he goes, if you could make me something that doesn't have that much, nightshades in it, I'm like, yeah, okay. So I just use a little bit of Reaper in a cucumber sauce base. But pickles, I think pickle hot sauces are really on the rise right now. And when you think about it, when you put pickles on hot dogs, you put pickles on chicken sandwiches, you put pickles on deli sandwiches, sub sandwiches. So it's a natural to give that little bit of acid, that little bit of saltiness, sometimes a little bit of sweetness that rounds out the flavor of your sandwich. It's a no brainer.
Absolutely. Anything and everything I have seen now with pickles,
Yes.
and I personally like it. But I don't know if I can just go overboard with pickles. But I'm seeing it all over the internet. It's actually a trend setter right now. Yeah.
Well, hot sauce is the OG pickle. It's just puree.
It's a puree, right, right. Where do you see like hot sauce in next 5 years? How is the industry going to look like?
I think a lot of it is going to be dependent on the economy. If you look at what's been going on in craft brewing and spirits, well, craft spirits have been kind of taking over craft brewing. Craft brewing has been coming down a little bit.
Right.
Certainly, when there's a little bit of a recession, luxury items, which again, as I talked about earlier, hot sauce is an affordable luxury, sometimes take a hit. But in terms of the possibilities of flavor, and the longer that the small business owner has a platform like social media to grow their brand and get their voice out there and be found,
Mhm.
I don't see any limit really to what's possible. It all boils down to the creativity of the people that are making it.
Absolutely. Like social media has given so much power to small business owners and small brands. They can leverage that. They can do wonders in their businesses through storytelling, through making their brand creative, some developing some colors to it and just be like a brand image for that. So I think, yeah, that has taken over. So the last round that we want to do with you is rapid fire. So it's
Certainly.
going to be really quick.
Yep.
So we will have 5 questions.
Okay.
Mild, medium, or insane for you?
Between medium and insane.
Okay, that was not an option though. Okay.
It should have been.
Okay, if you are deserted on an island, which one sauce would you take with you? Rapid fire.
Yes. Gator hammock.
Okay. And your go-to food to pair with your favorite sauce?
Pizza.
That's nice. A hot sauce that broke you.
That would be, I think, was it Hellboy? I can't remember. I think it was a Hellboy sauce that had the extract in it that I
Okay.
talked about.
Your comfort food after trying something spicy.
So, actually, what most people don't realize is citrus is the best way to neutralize the heat. So,
Mhm.
whether you suck on lemons or limes or grapefruits, that will neutralize the heat faster than milk, fat, and definitely not water. It's capsaicins and oil. You need something that's going to have some oils in it. Sugar also tends to coat the tongue and reduce the ability for the capsaicin to bind on to your tongue.
Okay.
But citrus actually helps to break the acid in citrus helps to break down the oils in the capsaicins.
So you like to have like lime or like lemon after that?
If I need to reduce the heat, then I'm grabbing for some citrus. Yes, and I think that's what you were asking.
Right, right. Absolutely. It was amazing. It was an amazing podcast with you and an amazing conversation. I got to know a lot more about hot sauces, and I'm sure people who would be watching this episode would know more about how to choose their hot sauces now and what kind of food they can pair it up and how you can help restaurants coming up with their own brand for hot sauces and recipes because you have been reviewing it for like several years and you know what kind of notes go really well with what kind of food. So
Yes,
thank you, John, for your time. And it was a wonderful conversation. And I hope to try out some hot sauces with you next time we meet.
I look forward to it, Chinar. Thank you so much for having me on, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of my knowledge. Yeah, I'm all about education. If you want to follow me on Instagram, Hot Sauce Sensei.
Mhm,
On X, I'm actually Hot Sauce Blogger. I had that one set up a long time ago.
mhm.
The two platforms are a little bit different, so the content's a little bit different. But yeah, and then hotsaucecookbook.com, you can see my recipes. There's over 40 recipes on my site that you can go and make yourself. It's so easy to make hot sauce. I really encourage you to do it
Right.
and just have some fun with it.
Yes. And do tag us for you just so that we can know, okay, you watched the podcast and you're now making it.
Precisely. Precisely.